Welcome back, everybody, to the Banco Sabadell stage here at 4 years from now, 2025. We've kicked off in absolutely stunning fashion this morning. Lots of conversations on AI already, about how we take AI, how we move that story forward. We've looked at the past, present, and future very much with Jürgen Schmidhuber earlier, looking really at the where it's going to take us and in what sort of time frames as well. So we've had the big picture, but now we're going to from zoom out to zoom in and look at some specific applications, some specific areas where we're beginning to see AI really have an impact and do some interesting things. And that's what our next session is about. We're going to be talking about synthetic memories. And this is a really groundbreaking project in how it applies AI to help preserve unique identities of individuals through these reconstructed memories. So here to tell us more about that, please join me in welcoming to the stage, he's the CEO and Director of Domestic Data Streamers, Pau García. Hola, Pau. Hola.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. Today, I will be talking a bit about something that has to do, of course, with memory, but it has to do with the way we use technology to connect, to understand ourselves, and to understand the other. Almost 4 months ago, this terrible thing happened to Valencia, almost like 4 years, 4 hours from here. And these images were kind of the aftermath of a gigantic flood there. Now, I remember while looking at these images, trying to understand what had happened and trying to figure out like what's going on, what was going to be kind of the transition for all the people living in Valencia, in this territory. And one thing really stuck in my head, and was a sentence that a friend told me that was, in these emergency situations, normally what is more scarce is the drinkable water. And for me, it was kind of a paradox. The fact that a lot of water will break into a place, destroy it at all, and the aftermath will leave this scarcity of drinkable water. And I think something very similar happens today with information. Like data itself, we are in a moment that we are surrounded by so much data that it is easy not only to understand, but also to access to it. And I think that there is like this bridge between the natural environment and this digital environment, trying to navigate it through the tools that we have today. When we talk about data, statistics, and big numbers, we certainly have like this casual daily relationship with it. Whenever we are looking at news like the cost of corruption in Europe, up to 990 billion lost annually. I don't know how many in this room have 1 billion in their bank account. Can you raise your hand? Maybe one day. It's difficult to figure out what 1 billion is. Like, this is really, really complex, right? Our brains are not wired to understand what a billion is. Not 990 billion. And this is a problem, because whenever we try to address these situations, if we don't understand them, maybe we don't do anything to change them, or we do little to change it. So for the last 10 years, myself and a team of 40 people coming from very different disciplines have been creating experiments, prototypes, finding ways to transform Excel spreadsheets, databases, not into infographics like this one, into ways to transfer information faster, but into ways to understand what was hidden in the information. So arts, performance, film, television, all kind of potential ways, artistic experiences that will transform data and statistics into something that was tangible, that you could touch, that you could interact with, that you could understand the dimension of all these numbers, right? And all these experiments have been in very, very different places, from churches to prisons to schools to kitchens, transforming data into things that we can taste, that we can hear, that we can smell. And of course, when we talk about data and the impact that it has today, we have to talk about one of their side effects, which is artificial intelligence, that for me was kind of scary at the beginning. I was thinking, why everyone is talking about this? Why is so important? Why is so relevant? And I remember, like, a friend of mine sent me this image from La Ramblas in 2023. Jupiter sent me this image, and was nothing weird about this. Just one guy selling images, art in La Ramblas. What was interesting was that this art was made with artificial intelligence. With 3 years ago, that would be totally impossible to think of. So we now understand that, of course, artificial intelligence have been transformed into this ubiquitous technology that we can find like in the street, we can find in the way we behave and connect with our family members, friends, business, and so on. But of course, generally, when we think about these tools and how we apply these tools to our daily life, it always enters within this box, right? If in this box we have everything that we humans can do, artificial intelligence right now, or how it is being designed, is to actually tackle a part of this. It's like, okay, how we can optimize and even substitute part of our labor as humans to be translated to something that machines can do now. And this is not like really what I'm interested of, and domestic data streamers, the work we do is try to find everything else, everything that is not inside the box that we as humans can actually do, right? This is what interests us because it's things that are 100% new, things that before were like really even difficult to think of, right? So today I will be giving you two examples. The first one is called Surveillance, and is a project on computing vision that we did a couple of years ago. And it was focused on a problem, on a situation, on the idea of surveillance and how surveillance systems, specifically the ones using artificial intelligence, were used as a technology for control, right? Here in Spain, we have La Ley Mordaza, the gag law, but this is something that started to happen all over Europe. In France, in Hungary, they had like this huge Pegasus leak, which was terrible. And in UK, the new Public Order Act of 2021 was something similar, was empowering governments to use technology, artificial intelligence in some cases, to track and surveil society. It was creating an imbalance of power at some point. And it was not only a thing of course, like governments. It was something that was happening in the private sector. Here at the Mobile, we see a lot of stands selling this kind of technology. This was a product that was being tried to sold to Starbucks in the US to actually track the efficiency of all the employees. Now, how many cups they can sell, and so on and so on. On that direction, we can see how these tools generally are used as tools of control, but we wanted to say, what if we could transfer that and change that to make tools of accountability? What if instead of the camera looking at us, we could switch the camera and look to the persons that normally exert this power? So we said, well, the places of power normally are Congress, parliaments, the spaces of government. And we saw all these cameras over there, and some of these cameras are in streaming. So what we started to say was to create a model, an algorithm, first based in the Flemish scroller from Dries de Porter, who will track and be trained on people sleeping. So whenever a politician was falling asleep, this algorithm will be actually running through all these streaming cameras of over 36 different parliaments and Congress in Europe, and we will start to check whenever a politician falls asleep, right? What we saw was there were like some heat maps, some zones of the parliaments and Congress that were actually really, really bored by the situation, by certain policies, by certain discussion, right? Right now we are working in the next step, which is how we can transform this automated system into a system of accountability where we can actually tag the person that has fallen asleep and say, hey, please wake up. You are defending the rights of your people. And of course, this is the tool that we have created is a set of tools that are open source, so other people in other countries can replicate all this system and can turn it. Because sometimes, whenever we think about this technology, we think about military technology or like high corporate technology, government technology. But these are technologies that now, more than ever, are really, really accessible to a broader amount of people, right? And idea behind this project, that again is a prototype, is to say, hey, these tools of control can of course be a tool of accountability. We can turn the balance, the scale of how artificial intelligence works in certain directions. We can rebalance certain spaces of power. The second example I wanted to share today is called synthetic memories, and it started almost 3 years ago. And I always start by explaining one of the first interactions that we had with this project, which was an interview with Carmen, who is a 96-year-old woman from Barcelona, from Barceloneta. And we invited her to the studio. And she said, we started this conversation where I will ask her, Carmen, what is your earliest memory? And she said, well, my earliest memory, it's from when I was 6 years old, right? And when I was 6 years old, my mother used to bring me to another's family place. And my mother will pay that family, so we could enter their house and go up to the balcony of that family. And what was particular about that balcony was that it was facing La Modelo prison, which at that point in time, during the Spanish dictatorship, it was a political prison, right? And her father, a Republican doctor, was a prisoner there, a political prisoner. So the only way they could see each other was from that balcony, from that family, to the window of the prison. And she told me, well, this is one of my earliest memories of my father. Like this, how I remember him as I was a child. And then I asked her, Carmen, would you like to see an image of that memory? And she was, yes, of course. Like this is a very important thing for me. And this has built kind of my identity and the identity of my family. So we started to do an experiment, and with generative AI, we started to prompt some images. An old photography of a mother and a daughter on a balcony in Barcelona, Les Corts, the neighborhood. 1946, black and white, blurry and grain. And we started to generate 20, 30 images. But it was not until she saw these specific images that she said, yes. She jumped and she said, yes, that's it. I can see my mother here. I can see the haircut. I can see the clothes. I see Les Corts here, the neighborhood. It was kind of a visceral reaction to it. And then I asked, well, let's try something even to go beyond. Instead of just showing her mother and herself, just let's go a step ahead. And let's show also her father go looking back at them from the other side of the street. As you can see, this is far from a factual recreation of the past. The models that exist today are much better, and they can create like really realistic depictions of that story. But what we come to realize was that for people, when they are remembering something, the blurriness, the parts of the image that are kind of unidentified, kind of blurry and undefined, creates a much better bond with the way we remember things, because we don't remember things in HD. We don't remember things in 4K. We remember things in a very uneven way, right? So the early models of generative AI work really, really well to reconstruct these kind of traces of memory, right? And since then, we have been, for these 2 years, traveling all over the world, reconstructing images from very different communities. This is an image from 2013 when I was in Greece during one of the biggest refugee crises in Europe from the last decades. And I remember I was helping different families relocate themselves in the neighborhood of Exarchia in Athens. And I was spending some nights there with some of these families. And one night, an elderly woman told me, Pau, I'm not afraid of being a refugee now. What I'm afraid is that my grandkids will be refugees for a very long time. And I said, how come? You will find a new home. They will have a life. And she said, yes. The problem is that whenever they try to answer the question, where do I come from, there will be very few material to answer that, because we have lost all our photo albums, all the diaries of my husband. Our homes don't exist. The restaurants we used to go don't exist anymore, right? This reality, the identity that we build, are built not only in the memories that we have, but in the material memories, in the subjective, personal, cultural heritage of our family. That's why it's so important. So since then, we have been traveling to all these places, reconstructing images from really, really different communities all over the world. This was one of the latest experiments with Esther Malang in South Africa, reconstructing images and parts of the history that were erased during the apartheid in South Africa. A lot of parts, a lot of ideas that whenever they are lost, it's also a damage to the dignification of the stories of all these people, right? So how this works is quite easy. It's not like really technological project. The only technological thing is the software we use. But it's like any other interview. You have an interviewer, an interviewee, and a prompter, right? And you start this conversation, as I told you, with Carmen, what is your earliest memory? And from there, you create like this oral memory, this description of something that you remember. From there, you create a prompt, you generate images, and then you expose that image to that person. And sometimes they say, yes, that was it. Like they click immediately. But most of the times, they normally say, no, it was during the night, not during the day. Or the wall in the end, it was not green, it was blue. And from there, you do this prompt refinement until you get to a final result, until someone says, yes, that is how I remember this. So we have created like this whole methodology in a very rigorous way of semantics and different models that you can use to actually reconstruct synthetic memories. Right? And it was not until 1.5 years ago that we met David, this guy who was working in a nursing home here in Barcelona, and he was working with a group of people with dementia. And he told us about this therapy that he was using called reminiscence therapy, which is a kind of very extended therapy since the 60s in the US, but all over the world too, which is about showing music from someone past, from the 60s, 70s. Sometimes it's just showing images from that person past. And this kind of enhances both emotional and cognitive abilities for a while, temporary, for a certain amount of people. And we said, what if we could find a way to bridge this technology and this methodology that we are using within this therapeutic setup? So we started to do certain pilots in different medical institutions and health institutions to actually reconstruct memories for all these people. And the early results have been really amazing. Last May, here in the city of Barcelona, we partnered up with the Design Museum and the Agency of Innovation, Bitabitat, to create the first citizen office of synthetic memories, a public service, a prototype of a public service for the city. And it was open. We created like this whole setup that was working both as a kind of a functional operative space for the archive of synthetic memories, subjective synthetic memories, to a space that was more therapeutic, where you could book a session and you will have 1 full hour of 2 people talking to you, helping you recover like this past visual cultural heritage that you have lost. And of course, the exhibition itself work explaining the technology, explaining the science surrounding all this methodology, and explaining which could be like the impacts in different fields. For us, I think with these 2 examples, what we are pointing out is that there is a lot of space for automatization and efficiency, of course. And there is a lot of efficiency-driven logics in most of the things that we are doing with this technology, but there can be other logics that we could integrate, such as accountability, such as care-driven logics, right? And these are only 2 examples of many other projects that we are doing, and so many other teams of people, creative teams that combine philosophy, anthropology, and social sciences can actually integrate specific artificial intelligence, generative AI, to have an impact on this. And to end, I wanted to finish with this question that have to do with like this kind of hyper hype that we're living today whenever we integrate artificial intelligence into everything. And if artificial intelligence is the answer, what is the real question that we are trying to answer? And is there any other way that we can answer that question in a way that is deeper? And how we can reformulate the right questions? Thank you very much.